All right, welcome back to another live episode of the Relationship Series. My name is Gina Spataro, and this this is my brother Sam Spataro. Always talking about the matters of the heart and mind. And this week we are talking about obviously COVID again because, well, frankly, we are stepping into what they call the third phase shortly.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Who said that?
Oh, it's all over the news.
I got to be honest with you.
Yeah.
For the past 30 days, I couldn't tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you how many cases there are, what stage we're in, if there's another strain or,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you anything. So, okay, so third phase, third wave.
Anyway, so I think it's just, a good segue into our topic because, couples have been home. Who is that in the background?
Can you hear them?
Yeah. Couples
Sounds like they're having a party.
Couples have been in close proximity for a while, so this could be a struggle for them. Anyways, how was your week so far? How's your Beachbody challenge going?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah? Are you noticing the difference?
Oh, yeah. So I started about it would be 4 weeks ago. I did the first program. It was a 21-day program, but I ended up doing 28 days because I ended up repeating the first week to kind of go in sync with my group.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost about 10 pounds from that program.
Wow.
Yep. And then I finished that program on Sunday, and then Monday I started the new program. It's actually an 80-day program, but there's no breaks with these programs. That's straight. And it's pretty intense. So the first program that I did, the workouts were 30 minutes, and they're pretty intense. So I click on the first video for this one, and I look at the time, and I'm like, an hour. I'm like, an hour of pain and horror. So anyway, I did day 3 today. It was probably the hardest workout I've done from both programs, but it's incredible. And I can honestly say I've seen a direct impact in the amount of discipline that has been brought into my life with always making time to do the workouts. And it's literally just spewed out into, a lot of other areas of my life. So that's really good. Yeah, I have a lot more energy, feeling good. I'm actually being more, I don't want to say diligent, but and conscious, but when it comes to eating foods and stuff like that. So I find I'm eating less emotionally. I was a very emotional eater. So I find rather than, eating when I'm feeling emotional, I take action to do things, that are productive. So it's been really good. And business is great. I actually got a podcast that I'm going to be doing in April on the other channel with a local kid who was to be an ex-pro NHL hockey player who suffered from a lot of concussions, and actually, she did a video on it and was on the news. So that's really cool and exciting. We had a good conversation tonight about some things we were going to talk about. Got to know him a little bit better. And I've got my water feature going in this weekend.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And just overall, pretty good. How are things on your end?
Things are great. Enjoying the nice weather, getting out as much as I can. I think that's about it. Just doing a lot of house stuff and spring cleaning, that kind of stuff. But getting outside is very, very important for me right now. So even staying out later with my kids longer, it's been really, really enjoyable. So, and having fun with them too.
Oh, at school.
Yeah. So running around with them, just being more engaged and mindful and all that kind of stuff, which is really nice. Okay, so tonight's topic is a sexless COVID relationship. Do they exist? Have they started to exist? Of course.
Gina, they existed before COVID.
I know, 100%. And I think a lot of people are in denial of what sexless relationships look like. Once a month is sexless. Let's get real.
Once a month?
Like duty sex is not
once
sex.
a week is sexless.
Yeah. So.
And I think really you hit it on point. It's not that it's new. I mean, what's revealed right now are the problems
Mhm.
that cause sexless
Yeah,
relationships.
100%, 100%. So, like you said, what are the causes? What are the causes? And I think that the very first part of it is just getting into evaluating how your relationship got to this point. What are the stressors? What are the triggers? What is something that you can go back and say, okay, this is the pivotal moment when things started changing? In your analysis, Sam, is things like stress, worry, and anxiety are contributors. And how would you elaborate on that?
I would say they're probably one of the leading contributors
I agree.
because stress, worry, and anxiety affects your state.
Yeah.
It affects your mindset, which then affects your physiology. You don't feel at your best. You don't feel like you want to give more.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
don't want to do more because you're so caught up in your head and the things that you're stressed and worried about, which then end up producing the anxiety, which spins off, a spew of all the things you need to fear. Maybe during COVID, it's financials.
Mhm.
It's you lost your job or business. Maybe your kids are at home and you don't know how to deal with that. And I can speak for myself. Thank God, my wife is a teacher. Your
Mhm.
kids were at home and you had to teach them all their schoolwork and deal with solving their problems. Like COVID just exacerbated so many things. But,
Yeah.
when you're already dealing with the daily compounds of stress and anxiety, and then you manifest it through the uncertainty of COVID and some pandemic, I mean, it just trickles down into all these nasty emotions and it just fuels it so much more. And I know for myself, I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but when I'm stressed and anxious, like, you know, I mean, sex is good because it can be a stress reliever, but I don't feel like I'm at my best. I don't feel like I can be my best. I can give my best,
Right.
and likewise for your partner because it's probably affecting her or his energy as well.
Yeah. And I think I think if you live in an anxious state anyway, I think that it hinders on that relationship part, the intimate part, right? Where it even puts a burden on the other partner where it's like, okay, I don't want to do this, trigger them during this, or etc. Right? So everyone always feels like they're walking on eggshells, where that intimate connection should be spontaneous at times and like voluntary also, where it's like it's receptive, and they lose that because obviously we know like the honeymoon phase, it is called the honeymoon phase for a reason. It exists. Once you get comfortable with people, people stop living in that moment, right? And they just get very comfortable. When that's when everything should start. When that's when the conscious effort should be like, okay, this is when you got to put the work in. This is where you have to be conscious of your partner's needs, because once there's lack in this area, I don't know what relationship is left. I really don't. This is one of the major fundamentals for a relationship in this connection for man and woman, for sure.
No, I agree. And before we go further, I mean,
Yeah.
let's face it, when you have our health officials basically telling you to wrap yourself in a condom
Hmm.
when you're going to have intimacy with somebody else
Right.
or your partner, or maybe you're single, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to cause a lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah, 100%. So what about confinement?
Well, I mean, confinement for me, I mean, says a lot of things, and I touched on it earlier. I mean, it ends up showing a lot of the underlying problems, relationships that are hidden when life was busy.
Right.
And this can create a lot of disconnect, questions, and frustration.
Mhm.
You know, they always say, you know, you are who you are when nobody's around.
Mm.
Well, when you're in a relationship and you're confined to a space where you're seeing that person that you're with, or maybe you might have just started a relationship with, I mean, the flaws are going to start flying,
Right,
and
100%.
and when you're already in those previous states, stacking confinement and seclusion and a lack of like connection with others, you're just compounding the whole issue around the sexless part of the
Mhm.
relationship.
Yep, 100%. And don't forget, this is how, like you said, yes, it may exemplify, but it's also an opportunity for you to understand where your um, growth lies too, right? Where it's like, okay, this person is with me a lot. This is where I need to grow as a person, where maybe it might be patience, it might be service, it might be a lot of things, right? Where a lot of the times what gets involved with us moving past that is our ego and our pride, right? And that struggle to see past it. But confinement will teach you a lot about yourself and your partner. I 100% agree. Um, okay, so you said conclusion. Emotional state affects our sexual drive and our desire on who we become during challenging times. Elaborate.
Well, I mean, we all have a place we go in
Yeah.
times of joy and in times of uncertainty.
Hmm.
And so, when there's times of uncertainty, it really shows the parts of your character that need to be improved.
Hmm.
And let's face it, I mean, if you take all the years that we've been on this planet and the amount of time we actually sit down and work on ourselves, I mean, it's very seldom. Now,
Yeah.
when you're pushed into a time like today with COVID and all the uncertainty thrown at you,
Hmm.
it really shows deep down the flaws that are going on in you. And that means, where am I going emotionally in the times
Right.
of uncertainty? And that's going to affect your sexual drive and desire. And it's all going to dictate who we become during challenging times. It doesn't have to be that way,
Right.
right? It doesn't have to be that way. However, in times of despair and uncertainty, I mean, the average person at best on how to deal with it and get out of it in the best way, is maybe at 30 to 40%,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So,
And of course, there's ways to recognize this. And of course, there's things that you can do to change. I mean, the first one, when we get into it, I think a lot of the times, like I said before, we get comfortable once we kind of like hook, line, and sinker
oh yeah,
that person that we call our forever. But you have to understand something. No one is attached to you forever. No one is entitled to you forever. Just because a piece of paper or document is signed doesn't mean you are granted forever with this person. Now, if you want to be with this person forever and that person wants to be with you forever and you commit to that, that's fantastic. But there's work that goes along on both sides, right? And I think the one that you put first is self-care. I couldn't agree more. So many times you hear, well, the person that I met isn't the person I know today. Why? Why? Because did they lose respect for their self-care practices? They think that they don't have to try as hard now that they're in a committed relationship. There's so many factors. There's so many factors, but I'll let you go on this one.
well, I wrote a couple things. So, making time for self-care, there's obviously a few things that you can do, right? You can join a workout group. Don't do
Mhm.
it by yourself. And to be honest, anyone will end up getting annoyed or frustrated with someone by spending too much time with them. So
Mhm.
make time for yourself. You
Yeah.
guys, I gained almost 30 pounds during COVID.
Mhm.
Okay?
Whoa.
Yeah, 30 pounds. I now realize that I can't have late night snacks anymore, and I can't pound off a bag of chips and a pop. It just doesn't sit well,
Mhm.
right? So I gained 30. Gina, I haven't weighed myself in years, and I started this program just over 30. I'm like, I'm going to weigh myself. I was like 218, 220 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. And on average, my weight is about 175,
Yeah, I was gonna
178.
say 180, yeah.
So I gained a ton of weight. But if I
Mhm.
look back through that course of that year, I wasn't spending time on myself to be better.
Right.
I was always, trying to pitch in when I could help out with the kids, with homework, work as much as I could. I got to be honest, I was distracted by all the noise that was going on with COVID, the fears, the uncertainty, all the news headlines. And it ended up consuming me at one point, and it got the best of me.
Right.
And when you're doing that, you're not feeling good. And then you're going to do things that also don't make you feel good and eat things that likely won't make you feel good while thinking that you're doing something that's going to make you feel good.
Right.
But the results don't, come into that context. So one thing you have to do, guys, is you always have to take time for self-care. Join a workout group. I'm in one. And guys, I've never been more committed to my physical health than now. Join something. Like my wife tonight went for a walk with her sister uptown. Even as a family, every week on a Friday, we have family time. We'll have dinner. We'll go out for a walk for an hour or two, grab a coffee, a Starbucks, a Tim Hortons. We'll come back, have a movie. You need to be active, and you need to make time for things that give you purpose.
Agreed. 100%. And sometimes you need accountability to get a kickstart, right? So finding accountability, 100%. So creating a new meaning of what love is, because it's just like relationship, it can change too. You have an idealistic version of it when you meet somebody, and then all of a sudden, poof, that idealistic fantasy changes, right? So you've been married for quite some time. Has the meaning of love changed for you?
Yeah, it has.
Okay.
So what I've realized is that the more love that I have for myself, the more love I have to give to the relationship. And, I know when I'm not at my best, I don't have much love to give.
Right.
I give what I know. I give what I have in that moment, at that time, right? And maybe the next day. But I know, we talk about like in challenging times, we either become closer or become further apart.
Right.
And we talked on our, I don't know if it was our last video or the one prior about toxic behaviors, right? I mean, there's not a better time to see where they're going to show up, in today's, sort of environment, right? So I know for me, especially right now with the challenges that we're facing, it's a time to regroup and find a new meaning of what love is. There was times where, during COVID that, we've had, explosive discussions. And, some of my old patterns, toxic behaviors, you guys should watch our video that we did previous on that. I close up, not talk about it. It might take a couple days. And then I already know what the outcome is once we start to talk about it and what that conversation is going to be. And I just realized that, love is not doing the things that are taking it away. Right. But you only know to do that when you start being conscious and intelligent about seeing the toxic behaviors that you're choosing to do when these things come up and what the outcomes are.
Right.
Right. So for me, the new meaning of what love is during COVID is that in times of challenge, it's, how do you get out of your own way and give and be at your best?
Right.
Right. Because love is being your best. Love is giving. Love is forgiving, right?
And being at your best was the next point.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. And being at your best, we always look back in our past with people that are involved. And I always say, you can appreciate the things that were done for you and the people in your life that did things for you. And there comes a point where you have to understand that they may be doing or did their best with what they know, but it doesn't mean that it has to be yours. And I think that's where a lot of things come in. Where it's like, okay, what is my best that I'm challenging right now? Because I see a pattern that maybe I am used to in the past, or maybe that I was taught or whatnot. So you can always change your best, but it's a conscious effort. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, when you're not at your best, you're not passionate and full of life and full of energy.
Right.
How many times can you look back, or can I look back, or for anyone who is watching, that you can look back when something come up, maybe during COVID, and you already know the outcome of that conversation based upon what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and what you're doing with your body. Those three things will have a direct correlation to the outcome of what's about to take place. And so, if you want to be at your best, I always tell people, take a pause between, especially if you're in the moment, reacting and seeing what will happen if you decide to, do the things in that moment based upon where you are.
Right.
So creating that space to reflect on how you're feeling, then seeing what sorts of things will come about, what specific results will come from what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what you're about to do with your body. And if you don't think it's going to be a good outcome, pause. Choose some good emotions and thoughts. See what will be the outcome of the things that you're thinking about. Right. And then take action. I always say to myself now, you have 21 seconds to act on it. And if you don't act on it, you forget about it. You can't dwell on it. You can't think about it. You can't twist it, whatever way you want to spin it, what should and shouldn't have happened. You give yourself a deadline to take action. And so what will happen is you start to get wired in the sense that, okay, I pause between I react. How am I feeling? What will be the outcomes if I act right now based upon where I'm at? Then if you can see that's not where you want to go, then you create some new beliefs, some thoughts, look directly at the outcomes that will take place from that, and you give yourself 21 seconds to take action. And I chose 21 seconds because they say it takes 21 days to develop a new habit. And also when I did that anxiety program, to diffuse your anxiety, it was a 21-second rule. So
right.
I just, why not use it?
100%. 100%. So the next point is make time for intimacy. Now, I think it's different for different situations. If you have children, you might be a little less spontaneous. I think that spontaneity is still important. Creativity is still important. I think imagination is still important. I believe that, sometimes, yes, you're in your adult brain, but I think getting your childlike self out in moments like this where you're not so stringent really matters. But yeah, you have to make time. You should, I don't want to say even making time because I feel like it's so scheduled, right? But you have to value that time, I think. I think that's what would be important as well. What do you think?
Well, I mean, making time for sex is a must. I mean, if you don't have sex, you have a friendship.
100%.
Right?
100%.
So,
but it doesn't have to be like, okay, it's Monday night.
Well, right. Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
It's Monday night. Whose turn is it to come up with the theme tonight, or the music choice and selection, or what fruit or whipped cream we're going to use? It can be that Monday night.
Yeah, could be.
Right? It all depends on how you look at it, right? So, for me, I mean, have you ever met someone who felt worse after sex? Sex builds connection. It's also a stress and anxiety relief. It's also a great time to discuss issues because you are emotionally connected.
Yeah.
I know it can be tough because, when we're not in a great state, the last thing you want to think about is having sex to then talk about what the problem is. But it actually gets you emotionally connected.
Right.
It's no different than someone who goes to have a cigarette when they're having an argument, or have a drink, or eat a bag of chips or pop, or take off speeding out of the driveway. Why not have sex?
Yeah.
There's so many proven benefits to that. Number one, you're going to relieve the stress, the anxiety. You'll create that feeling of commonality through the intimacy. Yeah. And then it creates a platform to discuss it because you've kind of gotten out of your way.
Yeah.
Right? And
go ahead.
And then you can see past your own frustrations by getting into a good mental state.
Yeah. And I think on that note, don't lose sight of spontaneity.
Oh God, yeah.
Don't lose sight of, the uncertainty, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And lastly, your quote is, variety is the spice of life. Now, what type of variety are we talking about?
Okay, so I don't mean sexual partners. if
Right.
you're into that, that's great for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, new
Well,
adventure, perspectives, beliefs created through experiences you have in good and bad times.
mhm.
So allow variety in, especially today, and how you're choosing how to handle it,
Right.
how you're choosing how to perceive it, right?
Yeah.
And then, you can obviously, write a list of the things that can come from making these changes.
Yeah.
They'll have so many great benefits in your life.
Yeah. And I think also being open to, your partner's wants, needs, and desires, because sometimes those change too. And that's why I always say you have to be respectful and open and honest about them, because you may have agreed upon those wants, needs, and desires in the beginning, but something may have happened where they've changed, right? And you have to be respectful of that person's wants, needs, and desires, and how to maneuver that through your relationship, right? So, on that note, Sam, is there anything you want to end off with before we head off?
Well, considering you said we might be heading into a third wave and whatever the hell that means after all the crap that's been going on, take some of these things that we discussed today, put them into practice in your
Mhm.
life. If you also need some help, we have a coaching platform, which we link down in the description below.
Right.
And we'd love nothing more than to help you on your journey to creating the most amazing relationship. Because, like we always say, relationships are matters of the heart and mind, and you can't have it without one or the other.
That's right. And on that note, this is the relationship series, and we will see you all next time. Ciao for now.